About 3 years ago, I decided that I was going to try and drink a gallon of water every day. Heard all about these health benefits of doing so, and so I said I'm going to give it a shot. And it's a lot of water, if you've ever tried this. And so you have to be pretty diligent about drinking throughout the day. And so I'm pretty good about drinking a tall glass of water as soon as I get up. I bring it to the little kitchenette upstairs with me while I'm making my coffee and drink that bottle of water and then have my all-important first cup of coffee. And I noticed one day, not long after I started this, that I was very tired one afternoon sitting at my desk after work, after lunch. Sure, this happens to a lot of us. Get those post-lunch blues and you just kind of are dragging along. And so I thought about going and get another cup of coffee. I said, no, I haven't drank a whole lot of water since lunch. Pretty good in the morning, but after lunch I'm usually kind of bad about it. So let me have some water instead. So I went, got a big glass of water, and I downed it. Have you ever watched Popeye? You know when Popeye eats his spinach, he just kind of perks up and he's ready to go. This is probably the most real experience of that I've ever had in my life. About 15 minutes after I drank that glass of water, I felt like a new man. I had this new life and energy in me, and I was ready to go and to finish out the rest of the day. Now, this is probably a pretty bad analogy, but it's something of an analogy for our spiritual life. Right? We begin our spiritual life, we begin our spiritual day, if you will, by chugging a bottle of water. And that is our baptism. We are immersed in the water, the life-giving water of Christ. Right? We come to life because of that first bottle of water. And as we go on in our daily lives, we maybe do well right after our baptism or some initial kind of entrance into our practice of the faith. But as time goes on, we forget to drink of that spiritual water. And we get tired. We start to stray. And we lose that strength that comes from God to be able to do the work that He's called us to do. We find ourselves sitting at our spiritual desk, falling asleep. And so what do we need to do whenever we find ourselves in that situation? We need to return to the water. We need to drink again. Right? We need to be revived. And so we need to go to the sacraments. Right? If it's serious, we go to confession. We need to go to the sacrament of the Eucharist. We need to go to our daily prayer. To be reinvigorated with that grace, that life-giving water of God. And so that's the reaction we should have, but sometimes we have the reaction of the Israelites. Right? The Israelites, in their thirst for water, we hear, grumbled against Moses, saying, "Why did you ever make us leave Egypt?" Now, if we know anything about the Scriptures, we know that Egypt was not a resort where the Egyptians were staying and enjoying themselves. Right? Egypt was the place where they had been taken to become slaves. They were working for Pharaoh, and Pharaoh wasn't very kind to them. Yet in their thirst for water, they grumbled against Moses, wondering why they had ever been taken out of Egypt, why they had ever been taken out of their slavery. It seems a bit ridiculous, but if we think about our own lives, we do the same thing sometimes. Instead of simply asking for and returning to the life-giving water that Christ readily gives, we look back to our slavery of sin and we grumble. Well, why do I have to do this? Why do I have to be Catholic? Why did I even have to sort of come into my faith? Look how much fun all those people are having sinning. Why couldn't I do that? We do that. We grumble against God instead of going back to the life-giving waters that will quench our thirst. And we can think of a lot of different things that are ways that we experience this thirst. When we're restless, when we don't have peace in our lives, whenever we're unhappy. This is how thirst manifests itself in our lives, that thirst for God. And we can find a lot of different ways to try to quench that thirst, right? This is what Jesus was pointing out to that woman at the well. Right? You're trying to quench your thirst with husbands, right? You've been through 5 and you got another one that you're kind of hanging around with. That's not going to quench your thirst. But how do we try to quench our thirst in ways that aren't helpful? Maybe it's through consuming ourselves with either playing or watching sports. Maybe it's through consuming ourselves with our work, right? Trying to prove ourselves to people through what we do, right? Look how successful I am. Maybe we try to quench that thirst with taking trips or buying fancy things or eating nice meals, whatever it is. Right? All of those ways, all of those things are ways that we try to quench that spiritual thirst that we have with things other than God. And if that's what we do, well, this is a very interesting time for us. Because all the sports have been canceled. You can't take trips. If you do, you might get stuck there. Or if you come back, you have to be quarantined like 2 of our seminarians. We had 2 seminarians that came back last night from a mission trip in Honduras. And the seminary wouldn't let them stay at the seminary because they had been through the Miami airport and the New Orleans airport. And so they were deemed unclean. And so they got in touch with Father Bordelon. They're going to go stay at his rectory in Rain, and he's going to come stay here with us so that they can have their 14-day period of not being in touch with anyone. All right, so if you like to travel, sorry, you can't distract yourself with that anymore. If you like to distract yourself with work, some people can't even go to work. So maybe part of this hidden blessing from the coronavirus is that we're being forced to get rid of all of the things in our lives that distract us from God. All of the ways that we try to quench that spiritual thirst that we have with things other than Him. And we have to go to Him. We have to return to the well. Right, we have plenty of time in these coming days, if what we're hearing is true, to pray. Right, to be around our family. Maybe we are looking forward to that, maybe we're not. We're going to have that time to focus on returning to the life-giving stream that is God Himself. And so we pray for the strength to be able to do that. Right? To return to the water that is God, that stream that is His grace, and that we would drink from it so that we would never thirst again.